Step 1.
Using a 4 extra long shanked hook, I'm going to cover the front portion of the shank with some lead wire or lead wire substitute. Just got a light load of lead here. This would be a good fly for a floating line, long leader, perhaps in the evening when trout cruise into the shallows.
Step 2.
With the front portion of the hook weighted, we're going to attach the tying thread just behind the hook eye, pull down on the bobbin, and snap away the excess thread.
Now you've got the weight up at the front again, and this is to make the hook actually pitch when you're retrieving it?
Yeah, as I retrieve the fly through the water, either with a hand twist or a 4 to 6 inch strip retrieve, on the pulls of the retrieve, the fly will pitch upward, and then when I release the retrieve, it'll pitch downward. It'll give it that nice porpoising action like the natural leech.
Step 3.
For the body on this fly, we're going to use some mohair yarn. This particular style of yarn has no thread core. I'm going to lay it on the barrel of the bobbin, hold it in place with my forefinger, slide it off the barrel of the bobbin onto the tying thread and up into position on the hook shank.
Does applying it that way give it extra strength? What's the reason for that?
Well, it forms extra strength, and it also allows you to accurately place the material onto the hook, and also doubles up the material without increasing bulk too tremendously.
Step 4.
To form the body, I'm going to grasp both strands of the yarn and wind it forward up to the tying thread and use our thumb and forefinger to stroke the individual mohair strands backward along the hook.
So are you actually kind of pulling the mohair apart as you do that?
Yes, we're trying to roughen it so the fibers flow back along the body to suggest the long eel-like look of the leech. But we have to be careful. We don't have that thread core that many mohair yarns feature, and we have to be gentle with this because it is somewhat fragile.
Don't want to pull it apart.
Exactly. We'll just tie that off, place a few extra wraps in front for added security so it won't pull out, and then trim away the excess.
Step 5.
I've taken a toothbrush, removed the bristles, and replaced them with a section of Velcro. I'm going to use this tool to brush the fly on all 4 sides to further aggravate and roughen the mohair. We're trying to create that long flowing leech silhouette. I'm going to stroke it with our thumb and forefinger. And then take our scissors and using the backs of the blades, saw the mohair to length. We don't want nice even cuts. We want a ragged, unkept kind of look. So it will flow and breathe when we retrieve it through the water.
So mohair is another supple type material that you would use to give you an undulating motion in the water.
Yeah, it's very durable, nice translucence.
Step 6.
To further enhance the mobility, we're going to tie in a hackle of pheasant rump. And we're looking for a pheasant rump feather that has that nice purple sheen to complement the color of the body we have going here. We're just going to strip away the excess material so we expose the fine fibers of the feather. I'm going to place that along the side of the hook with that shiny side of the feather facing me and bind it in place. You can see a little bit of the stem is exposed. We haven't tied right down on the fibers.
It's an interesting way of cutting it.
Step 7.
I'm going to take the pheasant rump feather, place a 180-degree turn in it, and attach our hackle pliers at the base. What this allows us to do is make sure that the feather's firmly positioned so that the fibers will flow backward along the fly, wet fly style. 2 or 3 wraps is fine. We don't want to overdress the fly. We don't want those fibers competing with each other. We want them to flow and breathe with the rest of the fly. I'm just going to remove that tip section, if we can find it, with the scissor tips.
Step 8.
Take our thumb and forefinger and a series of sweep, stroke those fibers back into position, and then with some firm but not tight thread wraps, bind them into shape.
So that holds it flush to the body of the leech?
Yes, we don't want them too tight or it'll cause them to flare unnaturally.
Step 9.
For a little added natural iridescence, we're going to use some peacock sword. I'm going to trim about 3 individual strands from the feather and position them on top of the hook to form what we call a topping. And we want to get the natural curvature of the peacock sword working to our advantage, trailing over the fly, to kind of cup the whole body. Just bind that in place securely, and then trim the excess.
Step 10.
We're going to take another 3 strands of peacock sword and tie them underneath the fly to form a beard, in exactly the same manner as we did for the topping. Peacock sword is a wonderful material for this. It's so many modern flies, if you will, use crystal flash, flashabou. This was a material that was around way before those materials were ever in use. We use a couple of wraps to get it in place, and then check it for length. We want them to both more or less come together at the rear of the fly. And we're happy with our position, we'll place additional wraps to bind them in place.
Step 11.
For the head, we're going to take 2 individual strands of peacock herl, trim away the very tips, and then bind the remaining tips in place. I'm going to stroke them together and form a neat little head. Just tie those 2 strands off and trim away the excess.
Step 12.
Pull down on the thread, take our whip finisher, place the whip finish directly at the hook eye. Just trim away that excess thread. The completed Mohair Blood Leech, an excellent fall pattern, and we've preened it and positioned the fibers, and you can see how those peacock sword fibers cup the fly nicely.